acting looking stupid, he'll embarrass you. I'm fucking with them G's, you don't want the seat to carry ya. Money keep them coming like a bitch, so I married her. Hustle game sick, you should call this shit malaria. The sales on the cellular, the sales on the regular. You ain't got a gram of better, you ain't on my schedule. North side bound, boy, and I got a hell of a deal on the pills, you need to fuck with me.
From a web, no we can't, he's a pig. Look out, he is a spider pig. Spider pig, spider pig, does whatever a spider pig does. Can he swing from a web? No we can't, he's a pig. Look out, he is a spider pig. Spider pig, spider pig, does whatever a spider pig does.
Alright, before I forget, welcome in Team DWC. Y'all know what time it is. It's Spider Pig with another pig review.
No, we can't. He's a pig. Look out. Oh, he is a spider pig. Spider pig. Spider pig. Does whatever a spider pig does. Can he swing from a web? No, we can't. He's a pig. Look out. He is.
Alright, today's video gonna be a doozy about our boy. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Hit at the buy me a coffee if you really want to support.
What makes a man change? Each one of us are on our own individual path, with only aspirations, expectations, and plans to guide us. But we are also prisoners to circumstance. You may have it in you to become so many different types of people, but as each of life's many tests are thrown at you, with every decision that's made, the options slowly narrow down to make you the precise version of yourself that exists today. Upon receiving a terminal lung cancer diagnosis, Walter White has to accept that the man he has been up until now is going to die. And the saddest part is that the life the cancer is taking from him is not in line with the life he wanted to be living.
My entire life, it just seems I never, had a real say.
Breaking Bad is a story about potential. How high can you fly? And should you still utilize your skills if your talent is destructive to the world around you? But how does a man go from domesticated dad to drug-dealing kingpin?
Well, technically, chemistry is the study of matter. But I prefer to see it as the study of change.
Let's examine how and why Walter White changes over 5 seasons of AMC's Breaking Bad. When we first meet Walt, he's just turned 50 years old, an age that typically induces a midlife crisis, even at the best of times. But for Walt, he's spent the last 25 years working as a high school chemistry teacher, having sold his founding shares in the billion-dollar company Grey Matter early on for just $5,000. Instead, he dedicated his life to his family, now having to work a second job to pay for his soon-to-be newborn baby. He feels disrespected at school, financially squeezed, and emasculated by his brother-in-law, Hank. He's lived a life based on the fear of making the wrong choice, and that fear drove him to make weaker and weaker decisions. He starts off as moral, honest, humble, family-focused, and cowardly. When he receives his diagnosis, essentially a 2-year death sentence, he's confronted with the prospect of the end. Up until this point, he'd always followed the core messages of do the right thing, be responsible, follow the law, but it never served him. And now that he has accepted death, he realizes that life was always a death sentence from the moment he was born, and he's wasted so many precious years caged by fear. In order for changes to take place, humans operate on incentives. When we get positive results from a certain kind of behavior, you can naturally predict more and more of that behavior, as it opens up a mental doorway to our reward center. In pure survival terms, positive results show us that we're on the right path. Walt's initial decision to cook meth is still done with his family as his guiding motivation. He needs to make money for them for after he's gone. That's a moral, family-focused goal. The methods he uses may not be moral, but it's understandable. However, there is more bubbling under the surface for Walt, a bitterness and frustration with how the world has treated him, and more importantly, how he has let it treat him by not standing up for himself. In episode 1, when his disabled son is being mocked by bullies, rather than being polite and cowardly, Walt lashes out, seeking revenge, an eye for an eye. This is the first sign that Walt is going to follow his own instincts from now on. When he's held at gunpoint by Crazy 8 and Emilio, he chooses to poison them both. This was a big step for Walter White. The old him would have just backed down and done what they asked, but because he had already opened the mental door to revenge earlier, the decision to risk it all comes easier. It was self-defense, but Walt has begun valuing his own life more than others. He spent too long being selfless and muzzled, and now he truly values his finite time. But Crazy 8 survives, and Walt now gets faced with the dilemma of having to take another life, or risk letting him go. He remains a moral and honest person, trying to avoid it, empathizing with him, even about to set him free. However, he then discovers Crazy 8 was lying to him and plans to kill him the moment he releases him. So despite not wanting to do it, it's self-defense again, and Walt has to kill him. The audience maintain empathy with Walt as he tried to avoid it, and the first words out of his mouth after killing are,
I'm so sorry.
This incident teaches Walt that words are used to deceive and manipulate, that morals are weaknesses that can be used against you. Now he begins to break bad more in his daily life. When Ken, an arrogant loudmouth, steals his parking space and generally acts like a self-absorbed asshole, Walt blows up his car. This is not self-defense, but similar to the bullies in episode 1, it's as if he's teaching that person a lesson, creating his own vigilante justice. Then Walt is offered a way out of the meth business, something that would actually resolve all of his problems, when his former friends and colleagues, Gretchen and Elliot, offer him a job with medical insurance, or to outright pay for his cancer treatment. This is where we see a change take place within Walt. He rejects the handout, but still decides to lie to Skyler, claiming he took the money while secretly continuing to cook meth. Now that he has proven to himself what he is capable of, he's no one's charity case. Taking their money is pitiful, but earning more money than anyone expects of him, that's something to be proud of. So now in stage 2, we see he's become morally ambiguous, dishonest but for honorable reasons, confident, career and family focused, and not afraid anymore. This new stage invites external as well as internal changes. Walt shaves his head, wears a hat, and calls himself Heisenberg. This is how Walt detaches himself from his more morally ambiguous acts, as it's not Walt doing it really, it's Heisenberg.
Just as your left hand and your right hand are mere images of one another, right? Although they may look the same, they don't always behave the same.
This side to him is fearless in the face of death, willing to blow up Tuco's office to earn respect and prove a point. Again, showing the escalating series of events that once the door is open, you can expect the same or more dangerous behavior in the future. The more risky decisions get the result he wants, the more Walt is incentivized to keep going on this path, finally feeling alive.
I have spent my whole life scared, frightened of things that could happen. But you know what? Ever since my diagnosis, I sleep just fine.
When Walt and Jesse get abducted by Tuco, Walt demonstrates a willingness to poison him with ricin. Despite the plan failing, ever since poisoning Emilio, that mental door is now open for Walt. Tuco is so repulsive that no one could ever judge Walt for his attempt, and when he's taken out, Walt and Jesse become a full team together, with Walt responsible for cooking and Jesse responsible for selling. But the cost of the lifestyle takes a toll on his marriage, as Walt consistently has to lie to Skyler, partially to protect her, partially to protect himself. He doesn't just have an alias, he's now living a second life, with a secret second phone, a secret second career. He gets confronted by Gretchen for lying to Skyler about her and Elliot paying for his treatment, but Walt has no time for her anymore. as he still holds a grudge about how they cut him out of the business. Even she can already see this is not the same man she once knew.
What happened? Because this isn't you.
When Jesse's mules get robbed by local addicts, he wants to let it go, but Walt sees that will be perceived on the street as weakness. He learned from Tuco that you have to rule by fear in order to maintain respect. This lesson is further cemented in Walt when Jesse gains a reputation for crushing a man's head with an ATM machine, even though he didn't do it, and Walt gleefully expresses the genius of the blowfish.
The blowfish puffs himself up 4 or 5 times larger than normal. And why? So that the other scarier fish are scared off.
The more time Walt spends in the criminal underworld, the more he learns how to behave from those above him in the pecking order. But we begin to see signs that Walt wants more real-life credit for his talents. Keeping it a secret is eating him alive. Similar to how his Breaking Bad spilled over into his real life with Ken, this aspect of his personality is now spilling over into his real life too, to the point that he's sharing advice with a junkie in a hardware store about how to cook meth properly. With his cancer in remission, he's getting positive results, so is yet again incentivized to keep following this path forward, as whatever he's doing is keeping him alive. Having made a deal with Kingpin Gus Fring, this next stage blossoms after Walt lets Jane, the love of Jesse's life, die. Jane is clearly a negative influence over Jesse, who Walt feels like a father figure to, and after she blackmailed Walt and threatened to tell his family about how he attained the money, he has no incentive to intervene. He doesn't kill her, he doesn't even touch her, he simply chooses to watch her choke on her own vomit. This is another big turning point for Walt. You can see his two sides battling inside him. Walter White would save her, but Heisenberg would let her go, as she's nothing but a burden. In the end of this moral battle, Heisenberg wins, and Walter White does nothing. But by doing nothing, changes everything. He's now morally compromised, dishonest, ambitious, career and family focused, and not just not afraid, but brave in the face of danger. In stage 3, after one too many lies catch up with him, Skyler concludes he must be a drug dealer, as she knows Gretchen isn't paying for his bills, and somehow $100,000 appeared from nowhere. She wants a divorce and forces him to move out. With the threat of losing his family and the guilt from the plane crash, Walt decides he's done cooking meth, and turns down Gus's generous offer. He has achieved what he set out to do. This is another crossroads for Walter. He could silence the dark side within him and salvage what is left of his family and appreciate his health. But similar to the glimpses we got when he turned down Gretchen and Elliot's money in stage 1, Gus preys on Walter's greatest weakness, pride, by having Jesse cook his recipe. Walt still gets paid his half, even if he didn't ask for it, so the same deal is in place, and technically the same product is hitting the streets, presumably being cooked by the same man, just not as high quality. Walt sees the game getting played and confronts Gus about his manipulative tactics.
That you believe I have some proprietary kind of selfishness about my own formula. Some sort of overweening pride.
But when Gus shows him the new impressive lab he has built just for Walt, it pokes at his untapped potential. He may have let grey matter go too early, but this could be his legacy, so he's sucked back in by ego. He now wants to see how high he can fly. Walt admires the professionalism of Gus Fring, how he seems to do everything Walt does, but better. He hides in plain sight, he's discreet, ruthless, intelligent, cunning, ambitious. He likes to view himself and Gus as equals, despite their completely different roles. But as much as he admires Gus, he also fears him, and his loyalty lies with Jesse over everyone else in the business. So when Jesse goes on a suicide mission to wipe out 2 of Gus's goons who killed a young boy, Walt risks his own life to kill the 2 men in question like it was nothing.
Run.
Up until this point, Walt poisoned Emilio in self-defense, killed Crazy 8 in self-defense, and let Jane die. But this time feels different. He's saving Jesse, which keeps it justifiable, but he's also taking a huge risk, a gamble based solely on self-worth. Having seen the lab Gus built for him and his product, Walt believes he's too valuable to kill. He comes face to face with Gus and looks him in the eye. This is when Gus sees something different in Walt, that he's unwilling to accept his subordinate role. He doesn't just admire him, he wants to be him. This marks stage 4. He's now morally compromised, deceptive, ambitious, career-obsessed, and ruthless. Walt knows Gus wants him gone, so has to arrange for his colleague Gale to be murdered.
Got it.
The first time Walt had to take another life, he valued his time talking to the man, even looked for a way out of it. But he has no such deliberation anymore.
When it comes down to you and me versus him, it's gonna be him.
As his experience has taught him that morals are weaknesses and only put you in unnecessary danger. As far as Walt's concerned, this is just business, and Gus would do the same thing. His plan works, and Jesse and Walt continue to cook through season 4, but the tension between Gus and Walt continues. Walt can feel Gus driving a wedge between himself and Jesse, having him become less and less necessary in order for the business to run, while he also becomes a greater liability as Hank starts to investigate Gus. Once the juice is no longer worth the squeeze, Walt is fired, and Gus threatens to murder his entire family. With no way out, as all their escape money is tied up in the car wash, Walt is given a choice: accept the risk of Gus coming after him one day and being out of the business entirely, or fight back. He's been so caged by fear his whole life that now, whether it's cancer, bullies, or drug dealers, Walt always retaliates, not only to gain respect from others, but so he can respect himself. As far as Walt can see, Gus is his only problem. He has the recipe, he knows the business, and he perceives himself as smarter. He just needs to prove he's more ruthless.
A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
Walt's ego is out of control. He's fighting for survival, but also for top position. But to rise the ranks, he must morally lower himself more and more. In order to manipulate Jesse into turning on Gus, he poisons his girlfriend's son to make it look like something Gus would do to make Jesse kill Walt, as Jesse knows Walt has a habit of poisoning people. But Walt argues that Gus is the only one who has already proven he will harm children to satisfy his business ambitions, subtly reminding Jesse of the sacrifice Walt already made for him. Essentially, Walt uses his perceived moral standards, that he would never do something so heinous, to get away with doing something so heinous. Another lesson Walt picked up from Gus: nothing is ever off the table. So with Jesse back on board, wanting revenge on the man who he believes hurt his girlfriend's child, Walt lures Gus into a trap by using Hector to blow himself up as a form of revenge. Walt is now so willing to lie that he will look Jesse straight in the eye, even shake his hand and feel nothing about what he's done. With Gus out of the way, nothing can stop him now, except that he comes to realize that the actual cost of doing business is far more than he ever expected, as Mike has to pay out a lot of money for protection, delivery, and silence. This makes him feel small, and Walt can't handle that he is now making less money than when Gus was around.
Just because you shot Jesse James, don't make you Jesse James.
Jesse and Walt have a chance to sell out for $5 million each, mirroring the exact crossroads Walt was at with Gretchen and Elliot in Grey Matter. Sell out early and watch someone else reap all the reward.
And I sold my share, my potential, for $5,000.
Never make the same mistake twice.
As he always learns from his failures and follows his incentives when they bring him positive results. So now he has to accept it's not just about his family or money anymore.
Jesse, you asked me if I was in the meth business or the money business. Neither. I'm in the empire business.
But just because he perceives himself as the new kingpin doesn't mean he has earned everyone's respect. Mike still wants out of the business, as the feds are all over him and he doesn't trust Walt. Walt's ego won't let him get away with a final disrespect, feeling almost emasculated again, like he has been with Hank. And for no other reason than pride, he kills him. There's now nothing Walt won't do. Now that there's no one above him to keep his worst impulses in check, it's impossible to see where Walter White ends and Heisenberg begins. Whereas Mike scoffed at the idea of ever killing his 9 men who were silenced with hazard payments, Heisenberg has different standards and wants to make a statement and tie up all loose ends. So he arranges for them all to be wiped out in prison. Just like the blowfish quote earlier, this sends a signal to everyone that you don't stay quiet because you're paid to stay quiet. You stay quiet because otherwise you'll be eliminated. No exceptions. Now proud of his work, sitting on his throne as the meth kingpin of the country, he doesn't just want money, he wants the credit.
Say my name. Heisenberg. You're goddamn right.
And this egotistical power play finalizes his transition into Stage 5. He's now morally repulsive, deceptive, megalomaniacal, career-obsessed, and ruthless. Anything that tries to kill him makes him stronger every step of the way. He used to fear cancer. He used to fear failure. He used to fear Gus. He used to fear Mike. But he conquers each of his fears one by one, becoming darker every step of the way on the path to fulfilling his potential. And now this version of Walt bears no resemblance to the man who first received his diagnosis, the man who lived in fear, the man who wouldn't take a chance on himself. And the audience is left to question, did the cancer kill the old Walter White? Or did it simply reveal who he wanted to be all along? If you enjoy this content and want to see more,
Y'all already know we don't care about that call signs. Team DWC, Spider Pig in the building. Let's see. It's a quick little one for you. You know what I'm saying? It ain't gonna hold you up too long. It ain't gonna hold you up too long. Let me hit the button.
Spider Pig does whatever a Spider Pig does. Can he swing from a web? No, we can't. He's a pig. Look out, he is a Spider Pig. Spider Pig does whatever a Spider Pig does. Can he swing from a web? No, we can't. He's a pig. Look out, he is a Spider Pig. Spider Pig does whatever a Spider Pig does. Can he swing from a web? No, we can't. He's a pig. Look out, he is a Spider Pig. Spider Pig does whatever a Spider Pig